wiser. My name is Rick Huckstep, and every week I break down the biggest stories from the tech economy, make sense of what's happening and what's next so that even my mum can understand. Hello, Mum. This week the two top stories that caught my eye are Cheryl Sandberg standing down from Facebook and Mastercard's move to use facial recognition for payments. First, let's talk about Cheryl Sandberg. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, because Sandberg has been the COO for 14 years. More importantly, she was Mark Zuckerberg's right hand and instrumental in monetizing the world's largest social media network. In 2007, before she joined Facebook, their revenue was around $150 million. Last year, it was $118 billion. This is largely thanks to the digital ads business model that Sandberg created for Facebook. But it's not all goodness for the most famous COO in US corporate history. Her tenure at Facebook is really a tale of two halves. In the first half, Sandberg was instrumental in making Facebook a money printing machine. The second half is defined by two major events: a personal tragedy in 2015 when her husband sadly passed away unexpectedly, followed in 2016 by Donald Trump becoming president, the Brexit referendum in the UK, and the Cambridge Analytica scandal that joined them all together. Sandberg defined the way that Facebook makes money by monetizing user data, creating a platform that was rewarded the longer it kept users online. And we all know that enragement is the stickiest emotion when it comes to keeping users engaged. When Sandberg joined Facebook, she was the adult in the room. Zuckerberg was only 23 and she was 38. At the time, it was seen as a major coup for Zuckerberg to bring Sandberg into the Facebook team. Kara Swisher described Sandberg back at the time as Zuckerberg's very hip mum. But here's the thing. In the early days of Facebook, especially around the time of the $100 billion IPO in 2012, there was a big question mark about whether Facebook could actually make money. It's incredible to believe it now, but back then, digital ads was a fledgling business model and considered by many analysts to be what was called unproven. Now, when Sandberg joined, she brought in discipline and processes and experience to an organization that was largely run by college grads. Remember, Sandberg had been running Google's ads business for 4 years. She also brought in a clear demarcation of duties. Zuckerberg, as the CEO, was the geek who concentrated on product development and the underlying tech, focused on making money and handling public relations. Sandberg brought a gravitas and a credibility that opened doors to advertisers that was previously closed to Zuckerberg. Now, in these early years, Sandberg's profile grew outside the company too. She was on Oprah, she promoted the role of women in the workplace and became arguably the most famous COO in America. In 2016, the world changed for Zuckerberg, Sandberg and Facebook. The social media giant was on the back foot as the scandal broke about user manipulation in the run-up to Trump's election and the Brexit referendum. Both were directly tied to the Facebook business model that connected user data to advertising revenue. The Facebook ad machine was exposed as a vehicle that could be exploited to promote a political agenda in a highly targeted and effective manner in plain sight, except that nobody saw it until it was too late. In both cases of Trump and Brexit, Facebook data was secretly harvested, manipulated and exploited to influence voters to support the political campaigns. Nobody can say for certain if it was enough to sway the democratic process in the USA and in the UK. However, we can say with 100% certainty that both campaigns won. So what is her legacy? Well, whilst it is used by almost 3 billion people every month, which is more than 1 in 3 of the world's population, Facebook will never shake off its connection to human rights abuse, the rise in mental health issues and teenage suicide, and election interference. By association, this will be Sandberg's legacy. She will always be seen as the key player in creating the business model that fueled the downside as well as the upside of Facebook. Sandberg was in the position of power and influence that she could have made material changes to address these issues when they were identified in 2016. But she didn't, or so it appears. This will be her legacy. Now, at this point, I'd like to give a plug for my new podcast. It's called Big Tech, Little Tech, and every fortnight Sean Weston and I chat about what's happening in the tech economy. Nothing heavy, nothing technical. In good old-fashioned, plain and simple speak, we make sense of the latest stories so that even my mum can understand. Hello, Mum. The podcast is available on all the major podcast platforms. If you want to find out more, have a look in the comments below. Now, the second story this week is about Mastercard's move to facial recognition for payments. It's already underway in Brazil, and Mastercard plan to roll it out globally later this year. All that customers need to do is take a selfie or scan their fingerprint, and a credit card is linked to their biometric data. Essentially, Mastercard believes consumers want the easiest way to do checkout. You don't say. That's why they're confident in the technology's adoption, which is backed by research from payment rival Visa. Visa surveyed customers, and they found an overwhelming majority, 86% of shoppers, are interested in using biometrics to make payments, with 2/3 of them expressing an interest in using fingerprint scanning to make their payments. This all supports Mastercard's claim that the contactless biometrics payments market is expected to reach $18.6 billion by 2026. So what's the bigger picture? Well, Mastercard is just the latest to push into biometric payment systems because Amazon has already been deploying it at its Go stores. Go are the cashierless Amazon stores that allow consumers to walk in, pick up what they want, and walk out again, because all they have to do is look at a camera or swipe their finger or their palm across a device. And biometrics make shopping and paying for things as convenient as it gets. And if you don't believe me, look at China. Now, if you like stories like this, then why don't you join my mailing list? Every Friday, you would get an email with stories and news just like this sent straight into your inbox. It's the easiest and quickest way to make sure that you never miss an issue. Details are in the comments below. Now, finally, a few snippets of insight and information that I saw as I was preparing this week's newsletter. Now, Twitter has been fined $150 million by the FTC for pushing people to give them their phone number on the basis that it was for two-factor authentication, but then using that number to target them for advertising without giving any notice or consent that this is what they were doing. Now, this practice started in 2013 and it ran for 6 years until it was stopped in 2019. Now, the Wall Street Journal has reported how Apple is trying to move more of its production outside of China. The current round of lockdowns and the longer-term political risk of having so many eggs in a Chinese basket are cited as the key reasons. But Apple are also in the news because we've got their developer conference coming up shortly, and excitement and anticipation of the release of Apple's mixed reality glasses was triggered when Apple filed trademarks for Reality OS last week. Now, for many observers, especially the metaverse aficionados, glasses are the missing piece from the wearables triumvirate of smartphone, earpieces, and of course glasses. There's also a couple of stories that caught my eye about Substack. Now, I have mixed views on Substack. I started my newsletter on Substack before I moved it over to Ghost. It's a great idea to create a bundled newsletter stack, but I think they've got it wrong when it comes to their pricing, because taking 10% of the earnings is just too much for what you get back. Anyway, two recent articles caught my eye. The first was in Vanity Fair, which talked about Substack's content policies, which frankly have failed to stop the newsletter platform from becoming a source of misinformation. Now, the second story was in the New York Times, who were getting underneath the financials at Substack. Now, the newsletter platform has just dropped plans to raise $100 million on a $1 billion valuation, simply because the market is in a downturn and they didn't think they would get it. But the New York Times does raise some pretty interesting questions about the underlying size of the business, even though Substack has got a considerable market share. Now, there are some interesting stories about Elon Musk, as there always are, but the one that caught my attention was the come to the office or clear off message, after Elon Musk sent emails to Tesla and SpaceX employees telling them in no uncertain terms that they are either to get back to the office or they can leave the company. Musk said that he expects Tesla and SpaceX staff to be in the office for a minimum 40 hours a week. And it has to be an office where their co-workers are based, not any old remote office. Anyone who claims exceptional circumstances will be personally reviewed by Musk. This is in stark contrast to Airbnb's work wherever you want approach that was announced recently by CEO Brian Chesky. And finally, space. I always love a space story. Citibank released a 92-page report on the space industry and they've estimated that it would generate $1 trillion in revenue by 2040. The banking group speculated the satellite market will continue to dominate, but the fastest growth will come from what they call new space applications and industries like logistics and asteroid/moon mining. Well, we'll have to see about that one. But right now, if you think it's a bit far-fetched, the global space economy's value is already about 400 billion, according to research from Space Foundation. And finally, just to finish off, do you know how many emails are sent every single day around the world? Well, the answer's 333.2 billion every single day. And it's getting bigger, because by 2025, that is expected to be 13% bigger. Thanks for watching this episode of Wiser. If you liked it, remember to hit the like button, subscribe button, and the notification button, and any other button that you can find on the YouTube channel. And remember to check out the links in the comments for the podcast, the mailing list, and any of the other stories that I've talked about in this particular episode. That way you'll never miss a thing. And remember, insight and information give you leverage. Till next time, adios.